Please, delegate, please be seated. We will start our meeting. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call to order this meeting of the subsidiary body on implementation. Good morning, all. Dear colleagues, good morning and welcome back to the third meeting of the subsidiary body on implementation. We have several agenda items to consider today. Under agenda item 10, on review of effectiveness of the processes under the Convention and its protocols, we will resume our consideration of CRP 10. Under agenda item 11, on mainstreaming, we will review CRP 8 and CRP 16 with a view to approving them. Under agenda item 13, on the Global Multilateral Benefit Sharing Mechanism, Article 10 of the Nagoya Protocol, we will review CRP 12 with a view to approving it. And agenda item 7 on capacity building, technical and scientific cooperation, technology transfer, knowledge management and communication, we will review CRP 4 and CRP 13 Rev 1 with a view to approving them. And finally, time permitting, under agenda item 5 on post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, we will review CRP 17 on communications with a view to approving it. Before turning our attention to the first item, I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat to provide us with information for taking the floor. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As requested by the Bureau, I would like to remind delegates to always wear their masks. Unfortunately, COVID is still with us, and we must continue to take the necessary precautions and follow the required health and safety measures. I would also like to remind delegates that the proceedings of all plenary and contact group sessions can be followed online using the virtual platform Interactio in viewer mode by all registered delegates. Access is provided via the meeting calendar using the credentials provided with your priority pass. Now, let me turn to the use of microphones here in the room. When the chair opens the floor for interventions, if you wish to speak, please press the button in front of you only once. The microphone will be lit green, and we will be notified of your request. When the chair gives you the floor, the light on your microphone will turn red. Please start speaking when the red light comes on. Please remove your earphones, speak close to the microphone, slowly and clearly, so that our dedicated team of interpreters can provide a clear translation. Some observer delegates who request the floor may not be identified by their organization name. In this case, when your microphone is on, please be sure to identify your organization before commencing your intervention. I will not talk about statements since we are in negotiation, but just to remind everybody that please speak slowly because we have a dedicated team of interpreters and they're interpreting in 6 languages. And so if we could just take a breath between sentences to make their work easy. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. Distinguished delegates, the contact group established under the SBI have been busy working since our first plenary meeting, and you all received report from the contact group at the last plenary meeting. So today I would like to invite the co-chairs that have worked since our first last plenary meeting, and let me now turn to agenda item 6 on resource mobilization and financial mechanism. I would now like to give the floor to the co-chairs of the contact group for agenda item 6 to provide us with a report back on their work. This group has been co-chaired by Ms. Ines Velay of Belgium and Mr. Jonizani Munshedzi of South Africa. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Jonizani Munshedzi of South Africa. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we last reported back to the plenary, my co-chair and I briefed you on the conclusion of the contact group's consideration of the non-paper on resource mobilization, which subsequently has been converted to a conference room paper for consideration later this week in plenary. Madam Chair, the contact group on resource mobilization and financial mechanism met again for the 4th time last night on 23rd March. We had before us the non-paper on a draft recommendation concerning the draft 4-year outcome-oriented framework of program priorities for the 8th replenishment period of the Global Environmental Facility. In our previous session on the 17th of March, we had made good progress towards the agreed text for the preambular and also operative paragraphs of the draft recommendation contained in the non-paper, as well as the first 3 paragraphs of the annex. We therefore continued from where we left off at paragraph 4 of the annex and continued through the remaining paragraphs until the last paragraph, which is paragraph 15. It is our pleasure to report to the contract that the contact group has now finalized the first reading of this non-paper. The results of this work, or the result of this work, would be issued as a CRP for further consideration by the SBI Plenary. Madam Chair, this concludes the mandate given to the contact group on SBI-03 item 6. And through you, we want to thank all delegates for their constructive and active participation during the total of 9, both visual and physical sessions of this contact group. Finally, as also reported during our previous report, in our view, we think that because of the significance of this item on resource mobilization and financial mechanism, especially the part on resource mobilization, of course, given the fact that there's still a lot of work to do, and also its significance in relation to the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, it remains our opinion that the overall issue of resource mobilization will require more work beyond this meeting, especially before COP15. We'll be guided on that matter, Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to all the delegates.
Thank you so much, and I'm pleased to hear that you have made a good progress, and would like to sincerely thank both of you co-chairs for your hard work. And I will also take note, of course, on your view about the need to further work, and I will come back on that at a later stage. But thanks a lot for your hard work so far. Let me now turn to agenda item 5 on the gender plan of action. Last plenary meeting, I established a Friendship Chair group to continue work that was started by the contact group on the gender plan of action. And this Friends for Chair group has been led by Ms. Camila Cepeda-Lizama of Mexico. And they have met, and I think they also have finalized their work. So I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Lizama from Mexico. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As stated in the SBI Plenary on Tuesday, 22 March, the SBI Chair convened a Friends of Chair group to discuss the document on the draft post-2020 Gender Plan of Action. The group had its first meeting on the evening of Tuesday, 22 March, which started at 6:30 p.m. and continued for 3 hours. Based on these discussions, a draft text was prepared for consideration in a follow-up meeting, which was held on the evening of Wednesday 23rd March, met at 6:30 p.m. for another 2.5 hours. There was a strong, positive spirit of collaboration in the group, which included representatives from 16 parties, including representatives speaking on behalf of the EU, as well as 5 observer organizations and 2 UN organizations. The group was able to review the full text of the non-paper that had been presented for the contact group discussion on Saturday, 19 March, including the recommendations and the full gender plan contained in the annex. Based on these discussions, a CRP has been prepared, which contains very few brackets, some of which pertains to elements still under discussion under other items in the meeting of the working group on the post-2020 GBF. Issues that have been flagged for resolution in the text include the reference to the benefits arising from the utilization of in relation to the sharing of genetic resources. This phrase has been maintained in brackets in the modalities section of the annex, which outlines how the gender plan of action will be implemented in regards to the 3 objectives of the Convention. Other changes in the modalities section include an insertion on the need to ensure consultations of women and girls from indigenous peoples and local communities are carried out under the principle of free, prior, and informed consent. In the table containing the Gender Plan of Action, some refinements have been proposed on Objective 1.1, wording which is also reflected in corresponding indicative actions and possible deliverables. In line with the proposed new actions for Objectives 1.2 and 1.5, which were put forward in comments received when the item was opened in plenary on Friday 18, so the group came to agreement on possible deliverables, timelines, and responsible actors. Some revisions were made to Objectives 1.3 and 1.4 to resolve the difference in views raised in written comments received from plenary. These changes were correspondingly reflected in the relevant possible deliverables. Under Objective 2.2, the proposed action to establish a Women's Delegate Fund was removed, and this proposal was revised in a new paragraph 10 in recommendations, where parties are asked to increase the representation of women in their delegations to CBD meetings. We look forward to reviewing this CRP in plenary with the same spirit of constructive collaboration in which we work in the Friends of the Chair group. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Lizama, and thank you for this report. And I would like to thank the co-chair of the contact group and the lead of the Friends of the Chair for your leadership and diligence. You made impressive progress, and I congratulate you. Delegates, let us now turn to our next agenda item. Let us now turn to agenda item 10 on review of the effectiveness of processes under the Convention and its protocols. You will recall that during our last SBI plenary, we began our review of a draft recommendation, review of effectiveness of processes under the Convention and the protocols, as contained in document CBD, SBI-03, CRP 10. Today we'll begin our meeting by resuming our review, and for your remember what we did last meeting was that we have agreed section A of this CRP. We had a discussion about the preamble paragraph of section B, experience in virtual meetings. And before we have to close our last plenary, I had proposed that we had had a lot of views on the third preambular paragraphs under section B, and I propose to delete these preambular paragraphs and come back to the content when we discuss para 8. So to repeat again, what I would like to start our meeting today is to suggest that we delete the preambular para under section B, the third preambular paragraph starting with recognizing limitation of virtual meetings, etc., and that we come back when we discuss operational paragraph 8 to the content. Is it agreeable that we delete? Okay. I see Egypt, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, lady. Yes, we agree to delete it because if you remember in my intervention before, we made it very clear that most of the assessments were based actually on the CUB 13 and 14. When it comes to virtual meeting, it is very clear that the paragraph 8 deal with thorough investigation or assessment of the virtual meetings. This needs a little bit of adjustment in a way that we can all agree about it. So yes, indeed, we are in favor of deleting this para. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt, for this support. So I see no more requests for the floor, so we will delete the third preambular under section B. Is so agreed? I will now continue with para 5 under section B. Argentina, you have the floor.
Sorry, Chair. I was coming on the previous paragraph. I requested the floor previously. We would be okay with considering your suggestion on how to come on that when we see paragraph 8. However, we would not be comfortable with deleting it completely before we decide on paragraph 8. So if we could keep it in brackets, and when we address paragraph 8, we come to an understanding, and then we decide on the deletion. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. Maybe I was a bit too quick. I want to make progress in this meeting. So, well, let's do it. I think it's a good idea. We keep the third preambular para in square brackets with the understanding that if we come to an agreement on para 8, we could then consider to delete the third preambular paras. I think that is agreeable to all. Let me now move on to para 5. Are there any views on para 5, or can it be agreed? I see Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding paragraph 5, we would suggest deleting with appreciation and retaining only the expression notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Any opposition to the proposal by Brazil to delete with appreciation? I see none. Then we can agree with para 5 with the deletion of with appreciation. Is so agreed? I now move on to para 6. Is there any views on para 6, or can it be agreed? I see Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. we wouldn't agree to delete this paragraph. We would agree to delete this paragraph, excuse me, or to reformulate it on a less radical way, because we don't think that we have to discuss about a precedent yet, because we don't know what will happen, and we may have different situation where we would have to go back to virtual meeting. And we propose to delete that, but to work on the rest of the text, a para, and I think there are many propositions in this situation, that we work on a good analysis of what happened, how it could improve, and maybe the criteria, how to go with virtual meeting if it's needed. So we would like to delete this paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. So we do have a proposal from Switzerland to delete para 6. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And specifically about these possibilities these were the possibilities that were coming to my head when I requested to keep between brackets the preambular paragraph that we were discussing. I think that we have different understandings on where we are, and we cannot definitely agree to the deletion of this paragraph. I would also call the attention of the Swiss delegation regarding paragraph 7 that requests already parties and representatives to remain flexible in the case that in-person meetings are not possible. So I think that the combination of those two paragraphs could maybe suffice this need to recognize that what we had done does not set a precedent for the normal business conduction of the convention, but that we also acknowledge that in case that the pandemic situations or similar situations arise again, we need to find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Would like to agree with Argentina and maybe consider saying after COVID-19 pandemic, and other or similar pandemics in case it will be another pandemic in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, South Africa. So I heard that you proposed that you could keep a para but add after COVID-19 pandemics or similar or other similar pandemics. That's correct? Any more views on this para? Gabon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to support South Africa and Argentina on the fact that there is a specific situation due to the pandemic, and we have also the para 7, which balanced the global approach. So we fully support to maintain this paragraph. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Gabon. UK, followed by Paraguay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm just a little bit confused about the reference inserted in paragraph 6 by our colleagues from South Africa, because this paragraph is talking about the specific instances of convening the virtual meetings that were happening last year in response to COVID-19 itself, not to other pandemics. So because this is sort of backwards looking, for us, we don't see the need to reference other pandemics here. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. Paraguay, followed by Uganda. Paraguay, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In similar vein of our UK colleagues, we don't necessarily see it as the right place to include the reference that South Africa made, but however, it could perhaps be better placed under paragraph 7 when we say as a result of the pandemic situation. That seems to be a little bit more forward-looking and not only in the past. And perhaps our Swiss colleagues, and I understand that they are thinking about other future crises that don't necessarily limit to the scope of a pandemic. So perhaps if they can come back with a language that could be inserted there to give them the comfort that they need. Perhaps other unforeseen circumstances or something of the sort could help us move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Paraguay. I think there are several delegations asking for the floor, but maybe I can, before I give you the floor, I would like to ask Switzerland if maybe you have heard the comments from many delegation to keep a para. If you can maybe consider we can keep a para as a, please Switzerland, if you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our view was that we were against such a strong formulation that we won't accept that because we do not want a precedent. And maybe if we discuss that afterwards on a process, how would it be possible to have such meeting when we solve the problems and the question, we can live with a non-deleting of this para. So I propose that we keep this paragraph in bracket just for a while, and then we discuss that afterwards, if you agree with that. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. I think that might be a good solution for now. That we keep para 6 in brackets, but come back to that when we have discussed the rest of it. But then I also would like to ask South Africa. You've heard the comments on that your insertion maybe should not be here in this para since this backwards thinking. Could you maybe come back on your suggestion? You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We agree that it's more suited in para 7. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Then we can come back to that when we discuss para 7. So, colleagues, I know that you have a lot of views on this, but I would like to keep para 6 in brackets for a while, and we will come back to that. So, if that you can accept, I would like to go on to discuss para 7. I still have on my list Dominican Republic, followed by Argentina. Dominican Republic, you have the floor.
Thank you, colleague. We support the interventions of our previous colleagues, and we suggest to add the reference to and other possible extraordinary circumstances next to pandemic situations. And it will read like, as a result of the pandemic situation, comma, and other possible extraordinary circumstances, comma, by enhancing capacities. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dominican Republic. I understand that will be an insertion in para 7, right? Yeah, that's correct. Okay, we come back on that. I have Argentina, Russian Federation, and Belarus, and Brazil on my list. Do you want to comment? As I said, my proposal would be to keep 6 in brackets for a while. So those delegations, do you want to come back on 6, or can we move on to 7, and then under the understanding we will come back to 6? If so, can you lower your hands? Okay, Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We can agree to your proposal. However, I would like to note that for us it's going to be very difficult to agree to this whole section if we do not say that the virtual meetings do not set a precedent under the way in which we conduct business in the convention. Because this was what the Bureau and the parties accepted when we decided to conduct the virtual meetings. And if we were not to say that, it would mean that they do set a precedent. And this is exactly what we do not want. So we are okay with trying to agree on the other paragraph, but we strongly call for accepting this paragraph, because if not, it's going to be difficult to accept the whole section. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I have noted that. Belarus, followed by Russian Federation. Belarus, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a proposal on paragraph 7. The Republic of Belarus has noted the Secretariat's effort to organize virtual meetings in connection with the pandemic. At the same time, we here meet in Geneva in person, which has become possible with understandable limitations. That's why we propose the words as long as in-person meetings cannot be held, to be replaced with as long as in-person meetings will have to be held with limitations. Thank you.
Thank you, Belarus. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
I thank you, Madam Chair. We have concerns that are similar to those that have been set out by the representative of the Republic of Belarus. That's why I would like to propose that in line 2, after the word virtual, we would add and hybrid before meetings. Because at present, some delegations are in a situation when they are forced to participate in a hybrid mode. The rest of the text would remain unchanged. Thank you.
Thank you, Russian Federation. And as you understand, I have now, the comments are now on para 7, so if there are any more comments on para 7, yeah, Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding paragraph 7, we would like to suggest deleting the expression to remain flexible. We understand that we need to be cautious when calling upon parties to be flexible, given the experience we had with the virtual meetings last year, which has placed a significant burden on the human resources of developing countries, and especially small delegations, who often didn't have the capacity to follow all the meetings because they also need to continue their regular workload in their capitals. So the idea of flexibility here is somehow out of place because it simply disregards the significant burden that has been placed on delegations from developing countries. And I would like to join my distinguished colleague from Argentina that this whole section depends on agreeing on paragraph 6. Given the fact that we should not be preempting future extraordinary circumstances. And I would like to remind all parties that the discussion on virtual meetings started in the end of 2020, and it followed a very careful step-by-step approach. First, we agreed on having informal virtual sessions, then we agreed on having formal virtual sessions, and then the virtual section of the Open Networking Group. And for each one of those steps, we have very comprehensive regional consultations to assess the challenges of each regional group. So honestly, if we're not able to agree on paragraph 6, I think this whole session will need to go. And regarding the proposal from a distinguished colleague from the Dominican Republic, we're not in a position to accept this. We think here we're addressing the situation of the pandemic, and we need to be cautious when introducing a reference to other extraordinary circumstances that we still do not know what they would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Uganda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I certainly agree with the position of Brazil that if we have difficulties in agreeing on paragraph 6, then paragraph 7 doesn't make sense to us. The concern we have, especially with virtual meetings, is that whereas we don't want to set a precedent, the concern is more than just that. The concern is that virtual meetings should never be used for multilateral negotiations, and certainly in the context of CBD processes, negotiations that require reaching consensus on decisions or resolutions from universal participation of parties, or at least close enough to universal participation. And so asking us to be flexible, especially in negotiations, I think is something that we find, we are very uncomfortable with that position. So would rather see agreement on paragraph 6 before we go to paragraph 7. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. I think I will try to solve para 7 because I think it's useful to have this discussion before we go back to para 6. But para 6 is still in brackets because it's under understanding we need to agree on both paras. So Egypt followed by Switzerland.
Madam Chair, Egypt supports statement already given by Uganda as well as Brazil. Both 6 and 7 are linked to each other. But at the same time, I would like to remind all of the parties that all of us we were worried about virtual meeting when the whole idea started. But with the technological advancement, we were able to resolve many of the issues. I'm not saying that we resolved all of them, but we have to understand that restriction in travel make it impossible to communicate and negotiate. So we have to be more flexible. Thank you.
Thank you. Egypt, Switzerland, followed by the EU. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the purpose with the deleting the paragraph 6 was really not to disagree with the flexibility that my colleague shared for this meeting. I know that it had been very complicated and it was a very big and huge work and difficult situation for them. So for the sake of a consensus, but to be able to discuss further, then I will retire the brackets on the paragraph 6 to give the possibility to the group to discuss further what would happen when we once again have such a situation. And then we discuss that in details in the next paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. And on my list I have the EU. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps first of all, even if it's not in the text, the EU and the Member States have great appreciation for the Secretariat's work to make these virtual meetings happen. And we actually have great appreciation for all of us who worked hard and had really to endure many challenges, difficulties, late hours, early hours. So a big thanks to all of us that we actually had them. That said, on paragraph 7, our understanding and reading of the paragraph is that when we have such meetings, let's make the best use of it. This paragraph does not say anything on the process on deciding of the meetings. And typically these meetings are organized based on COP decisions and reflected in the Bureau. So the safeguards that were applied before we decided to have virtual meetings earlier last year this paragraph doesn't say anything, so they would remain. The crucial paragraph is paragraph 6, and in that light, our proposal would be to shorten it a bit, keep the text, but it's not needed to add as long as in-person meetings are not necessary. It's just whenever they are organized, let's make sure that we participate, but perhaps more important, the second part, that we enhance our abilities to do it, because we do recognize the difficulties, and we really should work that we are ready, if needed, if it is decided following due process, that we can make the best use of it. Thank you.
Thank you, the EU. Cameroon, you had the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cameroon would like to uphold the EU's proposal and the proposal made by Brazil before that. We believe that paragraph 7 is not a problem because this is a continuation of the work that was held during the intercession period in order to make progress in proposing the new framework. But paragraph 6 remains a great concern to us. Several delegates mentioned the difficulties that have been experienced by developing countries to have official negotiations virtually. This is a real problem. If we have official meetings online, it means that a majority of parties would not be able to participate efficiently or effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameroon. Serbia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Serbia would like to support EU position and others regarding to deliver this decision as a final format for the long-term period to the COP. But maybe we could discuss here about the best definition. But finally should be decided at the COP because this is a very, very difficult circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you, Serbia. And yes, just to remind this is a recommendation for decision by the COP, so it will be decided by the COP. But I will just consult with the Secretary to see different proposals made, and I will come back with the proposal. Okay, I would like to handle the proposal like this. I will first see if there is support for proposal by the EU. I heard some support to make para 7 shorter. And the EU proposed to delete the text as long as in-person meeting will have to be held with limitations. Yeah.
Cannot be held.
Sorry, maybe you can read it out because
Let me read it out.
Secretariat.
This is the proposal the EU has made to delete as long as in-person meetings, then there was an insertion by Belarus, I think, will have to be held with limitations or cannot be held as a result of the pandemic situation and other possible extraordinary circumstances. So the proposal is to remove that, all of that text. I'll read how it will sound without this text. Calls upon parties and observers, bracket open, to remain flexible and, bracket close, to encourage their representatives to continue to participate in virtual and hybrid meetings, comma, by enhancing capacities and making available technical and technological facilities that are necessary for their representatives to participate in these meetings effectively.
Yes, can we agree on that suggestion by the EU to simplify the text? And I have Egypt followed by Brazil.
Madam Chair, yes, we agree. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But unfortunately, I cannot agree with the suggestion from the EU. And I think it is really important to keep a reference to the exceptional conditions resulting from the pandemic. So, and we would also like to suggest deleting the amendment from the Dominican Republic on other extraordinary circumstances. And I think this goes in line with our understanding on OP6, that this is exceptional circumstances. And we need to recognize that those virtual meetings were convened in light of the exceptional circumstances from the pandemic. So we cannot go along with the proposal from the EU. Thank you.
Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And in line with what was just commented by my colleague from Brazil, the proposal by the EU cannot be accepted with us because it would seem that we are encouraging to continue holding these virtual meetings, which is something that we think that we cannot agree, and we have heard because we said that that should not set a precedent. On that point, maybe I have some suggestion working with this text to have a compromise. If I may read, it could go like this, paragraph 7. Calls upon parties and observers to continue to participate in virtual and hybrid meetings that are held, and encourages to enhance capacities and to make available technical and technological facilities that are necessary for the representatives to participate in these meetings effectively. So the idea here, it would be to say that we continue to participate in virtual and hybrid meetings that are held, but not to preclude that maybe these meetings are not going to be held in the future. So if, as many have said, the parties or the Bureau or the Secretariat, and we decide to convene these meetings, and of course we encourage everybody to participate. But if we do not decide to do so, we are not saying that we encourage continuous participation in these meetings. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Argentina. I think it might be a good way forward. Could you please repeat again the last part of your proposal so we can capture it correctly? Thanks.
So it would read like this. Calls upon parties and observers to continue to participate in the virtual and hybrid meetings that are held, and encourages to enhance capacities and to make available technical and technological facilities that are necessary for their representatives to participate in these meetings effectively, which is the last part of the paragraph.
Yes, thank you. I think I got that. Okay, I think it was a good suggestion. I do now have another proposal. I would like to ask if you could agree to keep para 6 and para 7 just amended by Argentina. So para 6 will stay, and you will have a new version of 7 that will be read like this. Calls upon parties and observers to continue to participate in virtual and hybrid meetings that are held, and encourages to enhance capacities and to make available technical and technological facilities that are necessary for their representatives to participate in these meetings effectively. So my proposal is to keep para 6 and 7 as just amended. Is that acceptable for parties? I have Egypt, followed by Gabon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, indeed, it is acceptable. But at the same time, I would like to thank Argentina for this very precise and short paragraph 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. Gabon, followed by Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we can move forward with those para, even if we would like to see the last part of the para 7 by enhancing capacities and making available technical and technological facilities. This part be under bracket because it's also an important responsibility for developing countries to provide on themselves all those needed capacity for this aspect. So if we can keep it under bracket while we are thinking about the reformulation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Gabon. I can put those words in brackets. Zimbabwe, followed by Morocco. Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We don't see any problem in agreeing to paragraph 6 as it is, and also paragraph 7 is amended by Argentina. We have no problem with that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Morocco, followed by DR Congo.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morocco supports keeping paragraph 6 as it is, and we also support the Argentinian proposal on paragraph 7. This is a realistic and a doable compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. DR Congo, followed by South Africa.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for having given me the floor. The Democratic Republic of Congo believes that paragraph 6 can remain bracketed as long as we're looking for a compromise. Now, this session in Switzerland is already a lesson to all participants. We'll be able to find other possibilities to come together. I think we can find solutions in conditions of whichever pandemic, and doesn't have to be a limit for those countries who would like to effectively participate in meetings and negotiations. For our country and other African countries that are not so advanced technologically, it would be difficult to participate effectively in negotiations and all the works. That's why we would like to put both paragraph 6 and 7 in brackets. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Congo. I would like to come back to you because I think we do have an agreement in the room that we should keep. Sorry, I would like to come back because I think we have a general agreement in the room that we should keep para 6 and 7 as just amended by Argentina. Could you maybe consider to accept that? Because I think then you keep.
Oui, je comprends que.
I do understand that there is a certain opening, but we must find a general compromise. That's why we would like to start by putting both 6 and 7 in brackets, so that if we have a norm for virtual meetings, that would be a very big difficulty for developing countries to be able to participate effectively. Thank you.
Okay, I now see many hands raised. Maybe I give the floor to South Africa first and then Cameroon, and then we need to come to some solution on this. South Africa, followed by Cameroon.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. South Africa would like to support the views made by Brazil, Argentina, although we have a concern that the current modalities for hybrid setup does not allow virtual participants to make interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. Cameroon, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to support the position set out by the Democratic Republic of Congo. In case, really, when we speak about official meetings, it means official meetings of the convention. But we mention virtual and hybrid meetings in our work, but when we keep negotiations online, officially, we believe that we still need, because of this, to keep paragraph 6 in brackets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Well, I would like to do it like this. I think we cannot really solve it now. We don't have much time, but I would put 6 and 7 as amended by Argentina in brackets, but I would like to encourage you to maybe informally consult before the LDocs. It's coming back to plenary, because I think that it might be what we can. I think we have the same understanding on those two paras. It's just that we need maybe to understand the proposal better. So for the time being, I do think we are very close to a compromise on this, but since we don't have time to elaborate more, I would like to suggest we put both para 6 and 7 as amended by Argentina in square brackets. And Gabon, you like to have your square bracket within the proposed text? Yeah. So within the text amended by Argentina, it will also be a square bracket as suggested by Gabon. The text "and to make available technical and technologies facilities" will also be in the square bracket. Okay, I think that is clear, hopefully, to everybody. I see Pakistan, Sudan, and Morocco has asked for the floor. You want to come back on this, or can we agree, as I suggest? Pakistan, please, you have the floor, followed by Sudan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just suggest that, what is coming out is that difficulties the developing countries are facing, somehow this recognition, if it could be worded, we agree with the text proposed by Argentina, and this problem has also been highlighted by most of the African parties and Brazil, that we need to give some sort of recognition in writing that it is difficult for developing countries to work in virtual conditions. So just recognizing that, and then we, I think, can agree on the text proposed by Argentina. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sudan, followed by Morocco. And I think we need to close this discussion, because I acknowledge that the need to discuss this further, but we don't have much time. Sudan, followed by Morocco.
Thank you, Madam. Sudan would like to express its agreement with the text that has been submitted to us by Argentina. I thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Sudan. Morocco. And finally, on my list, Ghana. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madam.
I thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that just moments ago we achieved a compromise that was implementable. Virtual meetings is a tool and doesn't set a precedent because it has been confirmed in paragraph 6. the compromise proposed by Argentina is, in effect, a reflection of this concern, and in many respects, it improves the text we had from the start. That's why Morocco would like to renew its call to our colleagues that have certain doubts, so that we can accept both paragraphs, because I think it is a good combination together with the amendment proposed by Argentina. I thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. And finally, Ghana, you have the floor.
Very much, Madam Chair. Ghana strongly supports the position of Argentina and further supports what South Africa has said, which has been further elaborated by Pakistan, that even though we agree with Argentina, the recognition of the challenge for developing countries is necessary. And thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ghana. Well, I now think we have heard several views on this, and as said before, I think we do have a general understanding. It most likely will be possible to find a compromise on this, but by the time being, since it has been raised that some parties still want to keep 6 and 7 in brackets, my proposal is to keep 6 in brackets together with 7 as amended by Argentina. That has got several support from others, and within the proposal by Argentina will also be an extra square bracket as proposed by Gabon.
Okay, so keep,
yeah.
Okay. You want to keep it?
Is that acceptable? Yeah. Okay, I hope that is acceptable. Dominican Republic, is it acceptable? You have raised your hand.
Yes, thank you, Khalid. I was trying to support the Argentina proposal, and just to take into account that our proposal about another extraordinary circumstances was to widen the scope of in which these virtual meetings could happen. So we agreed to not mention the extraordinary circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your cooperation. So, okay, I see that my proposal has no support in the room, so it's so agreed. Thank you. And as said before, I encourage you to talk to each other before the LDOC will be discussed. Maybe we can raise the brackets. I will now continue and discuss para 8. And as remembered, we said before that it was also linked to the discussion on the third preamble para. So I see if any views on para 8, Russian Federation followed by Egypt. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As was the case for paragraph 7 in the second line, we suggest after virtual to say and hybrid, because the United Nations organizations have acquired a lot of experience, both in the virtual and in the hybrid formats. And it would be good to keep it in here to be able to work also in that mode for the Secretariat of the CBD. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Egypt, followed by Brazil. Egypt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, we support the statement already given by Russian Federation to add hybrid meeting in addition to the virtual. But at the same time, this paragraph is a good example of what is need to be done. We need not only to assess what happened in the past, but even the current hybrid meeting now, which allow online intervention to a great extent, and they can participate in the whole negotiation. So I believe that paragraph 8 is very, very important and resolve many of the issues that already been discussed over almost 1 hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. Brazil, followed by South Africa. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to be consistent with the concerns that we have been raising throughout this session, regarding paragraph 8, we would suggest that instead of an analysis to be produced by the Secretariat, actually we understand that it would be more appropriate to have a compilation of views from parties and relevant stakeholders on the experience from the virtual sessions. So our proposal for paragraph 8 would read as, requests the Executive Secretary to prepare a compilation of views from parties and relevant stakeholders on the experience from the virtual meetings held in 2021, taking into account the specific challenges faced by developing countries, and submit to the subsidiary body for consideration at its 4th meeting. And the rationale behind this proposal is that we need an inclusive and transparent process to make sure that the concerns of all parties are duly taken into account when assessing the experience of virtual meetings. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Brazil. We just would like to make sure we have captured your proposal. Could you please repeat it once again? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Request the Executive Secretary to prepare a compilation of views from parties and relevant stakeholders on the experience from the virtual meetings held in 2021, taking into account the specific challenges faced by developing countries, and submitted to the subsidiary body for consideration at its 4th meeting.
Thank you, Brazil. We have captured it now. Thank you. I give the floor to South Africa, followed by Switzerland.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. South Africa support the intervention that was made by Russia. We can also support the current proposal that were made by Brazil, noting that it was our concern on paragraph 7 that we really need to consider the experience of, given the current hybrid system. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. Switzerland, followed by Morocco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We really appreciate the suggestion made and the correction made by Brazil, and it's exactly the thing that we see, that we have to make an analysis to see exactly where the problems are and to find solution, because we might not be able, for exceptional situations like pandemics, to have not virtual meeting. And our purpose is really that to find solutions so that it function when we have to do that. And I really appreciate this proposal, and we can go also with the Russian proposal very well. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Morocco, followed by Gabon. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morocco supports the proposal that was made by the Russian Federation to add the word hybrid there. And we also support the proposal from Brazil about the 2 sets of words. Compile, I think compile is not exactly something which is a finished process, because you compile something, but the executive secretary might be able to make an analysis of that compilation. That's why we would like to add the words compile and analyze the experience gained in that first sentence of 8. And of course, the proposal by Brazil about developing countries is entirely it's a legal concept, and it belongs in this paragraph, in fact.
Thank you, Morocco. And as we understand it, the para will then read, if you could read out, Secretariat, with your addition to the proposal from Brazil.
Requests the Executive Secretary to compile and analyze views from parties and relevant stakeholders on the experience from the virtual and hybrid meetings held in 2021, taking into account the specific challenges faced by developing countries, and to submit it to the subsidiary body of implementation for consideration at its 4th meeting.
Thank you, Secretary. I think that's thank you. I give the floor to Gabon, followed by Egypt. Gabon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We fully support that last version which address our concerns, so we can work with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gabon. Egypt, followed by the EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, indeed. We support statement already given by our colleague from Morocco, because combination is one thing and analysis another things. And I would like just to remind all our colleagues that this already happened before. After we have the first experience of virtual meetings, Secretariat already compiled a lot of information in a way that we were able to recommend some improvement, especially helping developing countries to be able to do that. This already happened during 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Egypt. I give the floor to the EU, followed by Canada. The EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm speaking on behalf of the EU and its 27 member states. First of all, I'd like to support what Morocco and Egypt said. So it's good to have a compilation, but we can build on what we already have. Two further remarks. First of all, we would really also like to keep the request to prepare options for procedures for such meetings. To give one example, it would be good to have clarity what happens in case there's a connection problem. And it happened actually to all of us at the wrong moment, and it's always very challenging. But it would be have good clarity and see what the options are to address these issues. Another remark is we propose to delete the word specific when it's about specific challenges for developing countries, because actually many of them are quite common, and we experienced quite a few of them as well, perhaps to different degrees in different ways, but it's really, we had challenges as well, and let's address all challenges. It's fine to have, of course, here a specific focus on challenges by developing countries, but let's not limit it to those that are specific to them. It's a bit broader than that. Thank you.
Thank you. The EU. Yes, thank you. We have tried to insert the views from the EU in the text, and I also myself would like to suggest that we also add that we think about the experience in 2022, because I think we have not had any hybrid meeting 2021. So it could be added. But I will ask the Secretariat to read out the text as now amended. Secretariat?
Requests the Executive Secretary to compile and analyze views, from parties and relevant stakeholders on the experience from the virtual and hybrid meetings held in 2021 and 2022, taking into account the specific challenges faced, by developing countries, including options for procedures for such meetings, to address exceptional circumstances, and to submit it to the subsidiary body of implementation for consideration at its fourth meeting.
Thank you, Secretariat. I'll now give the floor to Canada, followed by Israel. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've been struggling a little bit to figure out when to jump in here. And I'll explain, but please let me know if I should hold on to our thoughts and come back a little later. We've certainly, I think discussions here on this item clearly show that there is much reflection on how we do our work and how we could improve it. But we think it would be a mistake to not only think about whether we should have virtual or face-to-face meetings. This is an item on effectiveness of processes. And there are other important challenges. I think we can all agree that we've been challenged over the last little while by lack of time, by slow negotiating processes, by sometimes frustrated participants, both parties and observers. And so we think the time is right to not just look at the pros and cons of virtual meetings or whether or not we continue to have convention and protocol meetings in parallel or successively. We think we need to reflect on how we can get our work done in better, smarter ways. We think we can innovate, and we think we need an innovative post-2020 processes to accompany our ambitious post-2020 global biodiversity framework. We know that there are new ways, creative ideas related to new processes that might be useful for us to make our CBD processes more efficient and effective, whether that be by using modern information technology tools in our face-to-face meetings or rethinking the ways we present and discuss our ideas. So we have a proposal for an additional paragraph. We think it fits better at the end of all of this, perhaps even in another section called Section C, Others, because again, it's not about virtual or face-to-face meetings. I'd be happy to share that paragraph, but also would be happy to come back after we finish paragraphs 8 or 9 and propose that. I'm just seeking your guidance on when that would be more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I think that I would really like to conclude on para 8 first, and then we can come back at the end. Thank you so much. I have Israel, followed by Argentina.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, we understand where Canada is coming from, and we're very much looking forward, after we finish 8 and 9, to hearing Canada's proposal on looking at some ways of improving the effectiveness of meetings overall, and not just the issues of the virtual and hybrid meetings that we're discussing now. And we're looking forward to seeing that. Going back now to the specific text as proposed for paragraph 8, we, in the original draft or the original text, there was issue here of discussing what is the experience from within the United Nations system, and for some reason that little part has gotten lost. We support the text the way it was proposed up till now, but we would like to put back into the text also the as part of this compilation of views, add the words "as well as relevant studies available, especially within the United Nations system." Put that perhaps right before the addition that was proposed by the EU. I think that would be textually the best place to put it. And that way we would gain the experience from the parties as was proposed by Brazil, but not lose the fact that there's also a great deal of information within the United Nations system that we can learn from. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Israel. I now get the floor to Argentina, followed by Morocco.
Thank you, Chair. And I think that we can support many of the proposals made, especially the ones presented by Brazil and others. We would like also to mention, I think that the EU made a good point, which was that not only developing countries had issues or difficulties with participating in the meetings, so we would like to bring back the great list that the Secretariat had compiled after the first reading of this document on, and it was in the introduction paragraph that now we have between brackets, that basically said delegations, so it would be the challenges experienced by delegations with network and connectivity problems, in particular by developing country parties, as well as indigenous peoples and local communities and observers, and by those delegations from countries where meetings were scheduled at difficult times. I think that we need to save that. It was a very good reflection by the whole CBD community on the extension to which these virtual meetings were challenging for all of us, for some more, for some less, but it was really, I think that what we experienced is that it put into question the way in which we were able to continue, and that's why we are here after 2 years of difficulties, and we need that there. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I understand your proposal to move text from the preamble paraphrase to this text 8. So maybe just so it's clear to everybody, I can ask Secretary to read out the para 8, how it's now amended. Secretariat, yeah.
Requests the Executive Secretary to compile and analyze views, as well as relevant studies available, especially within the United Nations system, from parties and relevant stakeholders on the experience from the virtual and hybrid meetings held in 2021 and 2022, taking into account the specific challenges faced by delegations with network and connectivity problems, in particular by developing country parties, as well as indigenous peoples and local communities and observers, and by those delegations from countries where meetings are scheduled at difficult times, including options for procedures for such meetings to address exceptional circumstances, and to submit it to the subsidiary body of implementation for consideration at its 4th meeting.
Thank you, Secretariat. I think I think the text now proposed with the different amendments from, I mean, it has really improved the text. It's very good to have different viewpoints here. So I think that actually the text now as read out by the Secretary could be a good way forward. Is that agreeable to parties? Morocco, you want to comment as well? Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would have liked to be able to incubate it visually, but with what I've heard, I think we can perfectly well go along with it. And in fact, it does meet the concerns of people on all sides, I think. Allow me to come back, if I may, Madam, to the proposal that was made by Canada. My Canadian counterpart.
Just deal with this one. So Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Okay. Can the text just read out by the Secretary be acceptable? I see that DR Congo and Côte d'Ivoire has raised their hand. DR Congo, you have the floor.
Merci, Madam.
Thank you, Madam. It's the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's just to support the proposal that was just read out by the Secretariat. We feel that the Congo Basin countries, African countries, that have experienced all of these difficulties in participating in virtual meetings through this Secretariat proposal, I think can welcome it and we can subscribe to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Democratic Republic of Congo. And then now give the floor to Côte d'Ivoire, followed by Brazil. Côte d'Ivoire, you have the floor.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's just to support the proposal that was just made. And to add that indeed, if we are here today, it is the developing countries who asked for a face-to-face meeting and who wanted such a meeting. And today, everyone is happy and welcomes this meeting, and we welcome the proposal that takes into account everyone's view. So we therefore, as Côte d'Ivoire, are prepared to support this proposal. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much, and I hear a lot of support. So could I please ask, I mean, if you are in support of this proposal, please take down your hand. I don't need to hear more support because I think we do have general support. Okay, Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate your efforts to make us move forward. At the same time, we still do not feel confident on the reference to options for procedures for such meetings to address exceptional circumstances, as we understand that this should be discussed on a case-by-case basis, and we have been highlighting the many challenges faced by delegations during the virtual meetings. So if we are to accept the expression analyze, we would need to drop the reference to options for procedures for such meetings to address exceptional circumstances. They should be considered on a case-by-case basis if we feel that for some reason virtual meetings are needed, but for the time being, we understand that they do not set a precedent for future work of this convention. Thank you.
Okay, I think that the insertion that you would like to be deleted was proposed by the EU and also got some support, but maybe we can put that text in brackets for now. Hope that's acceptable. Brazil?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if we're going to put this text in bracket for the time being, we'd also put in bracket analyze, both the expressions, analyze and then the options for procedures. Thank you. Okay.
I then suggest we put the analyze and the other text in brackets. Now I think that it's quite clear. Namibia, you also would like to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, firstly, I would like to remind everyone that Africa has very specific instructions from the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment not to take any formal decisions in virtual meetings. So virtual meetings already have very strict limitation on what they can achieve from our perspective. But I think we could also maybe clarify the purpose of this exercise by ending it by adding at the end of the paragraph, addressing questions of equity, participation, and legitimacy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, yes, this is really an important part of that. I would like to ask the Secretary to once again read out with make clear so everybody can hear it and where the square brackets now are inserted. And I hope that you can agree on that this time. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Requests the Executive Secretary to compile and, open bracket, analyze, close bracket, views, open bracket, and options for procedures for such meetings to address exceptional circumstances, close bracket, as well as relevant studies available, especially within the United Nations system, comma, from parties and relevant stakeholders on the experience from the virtual and hybrid meetings held in 2021 and 2022, comma, taking into account the specific challenges faced by delegations with network and connectivity problems, comma, in particular by developing country parties, comma, as well as indigenous peoples and local communities and observers, comma, and by those delegations from countries where meetings are scheduled at difficult times, comma, addressing issues about equity, participation, and legitimacy, comma, for consideration by the subsidiary body of implementation at its fourth meeting.
Thank you, Secretariat. I don't want to complicate this para more. So if I can ask is this text now agreeable? And if you, okay, Morocco, you don't disagree? Morocco, you have the floor.
Absolument pas, Madame la Présidente.
Not at all. On the substance of this paragraph, as it has been proposed, modified in this last reading. However, if we put in square brackets, analyze, since it is a term that already we already have in the initial wording, I would like to ask that compile also be put in square brackets, especially since we did have a prior agreement on the two terms that complement one another, because as far as I can see it, if you compile something and you don't analyze it, especially when I was given I was in the compilation and analysis of all of the experience that we've had over the last 2 years. Allow me to use this very difficult period. We have to find answers to be able to satisfy and cover the concerns of my opposite number from Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Morocco. Yes, I can put compile as well in brackets. Is it now acceptable? Israel and Egypt, you have asked for the floor. Can you please take down your hand if you can accept this text? Or
Thank you, Chair. I think we're very close to agreement. Just briefly, the addition by Namibia seems to us superfluous, and we would ask to put that in square brackets too, please.
Okay, the text proposed by Namibia is as well in square brackets. And finally, Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I entirely agree with the statement already given by our colleague from Morocco, because we are talking about a process. You start with compilation, followed by analysis, and then you provide options or recommendations for what we should do. And as I said early in my intervention, that the whole idea is going to make an assessment very thoroughly on the whole issue, including the existing meeting, which is hybrid. So we don't agree at all that to put the combination, analysis, and options in bracket. They should be removed. Thank you.
Okay, I think we had, I understand the intervention by Egypt. You don't agree that we put an options for procedure for such meeting to address accepted circumstances should be in square brackets. You don't agree on that? I mean, if you keep it in square brackets, we'll need to come back on that. It's still there. Okay, you could agree, maybe? Okay, thank you so much. Well, colleagues, I think that the text with different, all those amendments and square brackets, I hope it's now acceptable to you all. Ghana, you would like to come with? Ghana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Ghana wants to support the position of Egypt that we should take off the bracket for compilation and analysis. In fact, to make any meaningful outcome of what has been compiled, you need to analyze. And so we believe that the two must go together and that bracket should be taken out.
Yes, thank you, Ghana. But Egypt had just, even if they maybe would prefer it, they have accepted that we do have a square bracket. So I hope you can accept as well. Thank you so much. Okay, before I see any more hands, I would then suggest that we can agree to this para with all those brackets and amendments. I see no opposition. Is so agreed? Thank you. Let's go back then. I think this para is related to the third preambular text. And since we have now agreed to this para 8 with amendments, could you maybe accept to delete the third preambular text? We have moved some text from that third preambular to para 8. I think it was, I had that proposal before, but I think I had some opposition. From Argentina, maybe you can accept now we can delete the third preambular text. Argentina?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, with that inclusion in paragraph 8, I think that we can accept the compromise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Egypt, you have the floor.
Yes, Madam Chair, we accept to release it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I suggest that we now delete the third preambular paragraph. And I see no opposition. Is so agreed? Let's then move on to para 9. Are there any comments on para 9, or can it be agreed? I see no comments. Is so agreed? I would now like to come back to Canada that has want to come back and propose an additional para. So please, Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I was saying, this paragraph would actually be under a new section, perhaps in C, improving the effectiveness of meetings, because it's not just about, or not about, virtual meetings versus face-to-face meetings, but about much broader issues than about our CBD processes and how we do meetings. So it would read as follows. I'll read it once through and then I'll read it back in dictation speed. Requests the Executive Secretary to prepare, in consultation with parties, partners, stakeholders, and relevant external experts, an analysis of options to further improve the effectiveness of CBD meetings, including, inter alia, options to improve negotiating processes, to better follow up on previous decisions, comma, to benefit from innovations in decision-making methods and technologies, comma, and to improve the engagement of observers in CBD processes, comma, and to submit such analysis of options to the subsidiary body on implementation for its consideration at its 4th meeting. If you'd like, I'll read back in dictation speed.
Yes, please. If you could read it in dictation, please. Thank you.
Requests the Executive Secretary to prepare, comma, in consultation with parties, comma, partners, comma, stakeholders, comma, and relevant external experts, comma, an analysis of options to further improve the effectiveness of CBD meetings, comma, including, comma, inter alia, comma, options to improve negotiating processes, comma, to better follow up on previous decisions, comma, to benefit from innovations in decision-making methods and technologies, comma, and to improve the engagement of observers in CBD processes, comma, and to submit such analysis of options to the subsidiary body on implementation for its consideration at its fourth meeting, period. Just to add that we think that this is a simple, straightforward paragraph which does not bind us to any changes, nor would it prejudge any outcomes on possible options. It simply tasks the Executive Secretary to lead a process with all of us to come back before COP16 with some fresh ideas. So we hope that others can be supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have got it now. Colleagues, since this is a totally new proposal, I would suggest, in the sake of time, that we just add the text and put it in brackets for the while being, so you can consult and comment on it, because I don't think we really need, we don't have time really to go into debate of this. It's a totally new one. You haven't seen it before. Could that be acceptable? I understand that many more would like to comment on it, but I don't think we really have time. It's a totally new proposal. So I think it's better to put it in the CRP with brackets. If you agree, please lower your hand. Okay, I still have some on my list. Argentina, followed by Brazil. Please be brief.
Thank you, Chair. And it was not to comment on Canada's proposal, but we had requested the floor before you passed to the next proposal in paragraph 9. And it is because we have there to consider the analysis and options referred to in paragraph 8 above. And we should have there, I think, also the compilation of views. And as these are in brackets, we would need to solve both things altogether. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Argentina, for pointing that out. I was maybe carried away and wanted to be quick. But of course, we make sure that para 9 is in line with the text in para 8, so it's consistent. Thank you for pointing that out. Brazil, followed by Costa Rica.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to make a comment along the lines of Argentina. We think that the expression analysis and options should remain in brackets in 9. Thank you.
And I can assure you will be aligned. So thank you so much. Costa Rica, followed by Egypt.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to the proposal by Canada, we believe that there is an opportunity to improving the effectiveness of the CBD meetings, and in this sense, we will be supportive of including the paragraph proposed by Canada. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Costa Rica. But since it's a totally new proposal, and I think you need to look at it maybe and consider it more, my proposal would be not to have a debate on the Canadian proposal, to just put it in square brackets for the time being. I hope that's acceptable. Egypt, followed by Morocco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is, I'm not going to comment about it, but it looks quite interesting. But there is a matter of clarification here. If we accept this new proposal, does it mean that Para 8 will be removed because you have many brackets in it?
No, absolutely. The 8 has been agreed with the brackets already as just before, and we have 9. This will be a new para.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And a new section. So the proposal by Canada is to add a new section, section C, improving the effectiveness of meetings, and then it will be one new para. And everything will be put in square brackets because it's a totally new proposal. I hope that is clear now. Morocco, you have the floor.
Morocco supports your proposal, Madam Chair, to postpone the discussion on the Canadian proposal. But just to keep it in memory, I propose, please, I beg, be indulgent with the Moroccan delegation. Paragraph 8 has been approved, but I'd like to come back to the expression that has been used and to be in harmony. Oh, sorry, says Morocco's representative, paragraph 9. The expression analysis. Analysis, very important, that we have explained the other time. I'd like to insist that the two paragraphs should be consistent and logical. That is why I believe that analyze and the word pertinent should be kept as in paragraph 8. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much. And I can, yes, absolutely. The text in para 9 will be in line with the text in para 8. So everything will be kept. Cameroon, you have the floor, please.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cameroon would like to support the proposal by Canada and to say that a proposal that could help procedurally, that could be analyzed and would help to find solutions to the problems in paragraphs 7 and 8 that are now in square brackets. We need that decision. Thank you. That solution, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for pointing that out. Now I think we have come to the end of this CRP. The Canadian proposal, as explained, will be put in square brackets as a new section. And I see no more requests for the floor, so a revised CRP will, no, not a revised CRP, it will be an L. Yeah, so the CRP is approved with the brackets. Thank you so much. We will produce an L document of this item for consideration at a later date. This concludes our consideration of agenda item 10. Thank you so much. Let us now turn to agenda item 11 on mainstreaming of biodiversity within and across sectors and other strategic actions to enhance implementation. Distinguished delegates, you will recall that we made considerable progress on this agenda item during the first part of SBI-03. Our discussions produced 2 CRPs for consideration and approval with only a few brackets. We also decided to defer our consideration of these CRPs to this meeting. Today, we will review these 2 CRPs a draft recommendation on engagement with subnational governments, cities and other local authorities to enhance implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework contained in document CBD, SBI-03, CRP 8, and a draft recommendation on mainstreaming of biodiversity within and across sectors contained in document CBD, SBI-03, CRP 16. I wish to remind parties that under this agenda item, 2 additional documents were made available since the virtual session. CBD SBI-03 Inf 46, supplementary information on the plan of action on subnational governments, cities and other local authorities for biodiversity 2021-2030, and CBD SBI-03 Inf 47, supplementary information on effective and feasible pathways for closing the biodiversity finance gap, a note by the panel of experts on resource mobilization. So I will take the CRPs in this order. I will first focus on CRP 8 and then turn to CRP 16. So I now propose that we begin our discussion on the draft recommendation on engagement with some national governments, cities and other local authorities to enhance implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework as contained in document CBD, SBI-03, CRP 8. And I would now like to go through this document paragraph by paragraph. So I will begin with paragraph 1 under the heading, the subsidy body implementation. Any comments on paragraph 1? And I see Bolivia followed by Morocco. Bolivia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bolivia would like to read a general statement. The Convention on Biological Diversity assumed a vision long ago, one that emphasized the need to live in harmony with nature. We applaud and embrace the idea, yet we have not advanced in the concept, that is, in what it would effectively mean to live in harmony with nature. In the Western world, human beings and societies have alienated themselves from Mother Earth. They have separated and moved away from the cycles that have so defined human activities and cultures in the past, and thus have shattered the necessary and interdependent relationship that we need to establish with nature, creating a civilizational model that has conceived nature as an inert object, a resource at our very whim and disposal, an object under our domain and control, governed by an insatiable appetite and greed. All this arises from our anthropogenic paradigm, which has separated us from nature, other species, amongst ourselves, and has solely given way to economic ambition. Today, as we attempt to impose the idea that green capitalism or green businesses are the solution to the biodiversity crisis caused by capitalism, the main problem appears as the main solution. This is a deep contradiction and must not be given our acceptance. Because of this context, we must engage in an in-depth discussion about the implications of business for the protection and conservation of biodiversity. However, the countries present have not had the opportunity to discuss this issue in depth and will need options that come forth from a different paradigm to move forward. Therefore, in accordance with the principles above stated, Bolivia is not in a position to approve the long-term strategy contained in Annex, despite of the mandate of this previous COP, as we believe we have not had the appropriate opportunity to discuss this document openly. Thus, we repeat, Bolivia is not able at this stage to approve the long-term strategic approach to mainstreaming. We are only in the position to approve a document that we could call nationally voluntary guidance to mainstreaming biodiversity to be applied by countries that wish to do so. In this context, we request to approve only the 3 strategic areas as the areas for promoting voluntary work at the national level. We are not in a position to approve the headline actions of the Annex since it seeks to approve details that need more discussion. In the Bolivian view, many of the actions proposed under the objective of mainstreaming biodiversity are merely moving forward towards the commodification of nature, which is no way a means to move forward to living in harmony with nature. Also, we are not in a position to approve the action plan for the long-term approach to mainstreaming biodiversity. This includes, in addition to the action areas, proposed activities and possible milestones and actors, since this needs further detailed discussions among parties. To this end, we would be willing to approve only the general guidelines at the level of general work areas without going into detail on the actions. This debate possibly has to continue in the future if some parties would willingly do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bolivia, and I take note of your statement, but please, I think we have opened the floor on the CRP 8, on engagement with some national governments, citizens, and local authorities. I think many of your comments relate to CRP 16. So maybe we can come back. Yeah, I think all of them relates to the CRP 16. So I would like now to handle CRP 8. And I have asked if there were any comments on the paragraph 1 under the heading, and I have on my list Morocco followed by Argentina. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I wish you luck in your following leadership in our work with all the tasks that you have to implement in the remaining few days, and I hope we can succeed together. Now, we are together with the African group concerning the CRP 8. The subnational governments, cities, and local authorities are undoubtedly key stakeholders and actors in this area. They have legislative and administrative authority and a very deep knowledge of the situation locally, and have a huge capacity to offer innovative solutions and make important contributions to the post-2020 GBF. The African group, I'm speaking on behalf of it, supports the participation and the contribution by the subnational government, cities, and other authorities to the GBF on the basis of one of the articles of the convention. That's why we support the importance of mobilizing the subnational authorities to contribute to the national action plans and their contribution to the post-2020 GBF in this period starting from 2020. National authorities would need that support. The African group, and I'm concluding, Madam Chair, would like to add a paragraph in the preamble of the draft decision recalling the contribution to the national plans of the subnational government, cities, and local authorities in the preparation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. And I thank you.
Yes, Morocco. Could you please read it again in dictation speed, please, your suggestion?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yes, sorry. I would like you to read once again your proposal so we can follow it correctly. Thank you. And exactly where you want it to be put. Thank you.
La rédaction finale, Madame la Présidente.
The final text, I still don't have it in my hands, but I will come back to you to indicate the right place in the document and the exact text, if you allow me, Madam Chair.
Yes, of course. And please, if you can come back at this meeting, because we now try to finalize CRP 8. So if you can come back at this session.
With the text.
With the text proposed, so we can consider it. Yes, Morocco.
C'est mon espoir, Madame.
That's what I hope, Madam Chair.
Je ferai tout le nécessaire.
I'll do everything it takes to present this text before this meeting concludes at 1 p.m.
Thank you so much. Okay, I would then like to propose if we can agree on okay, but we know we'll come back to the proposal by Morocco. So I still would like to see if we can agree on para 1. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding OP1 under the head subsidiary body and implementation, we would suggest replacing welcomes with takes note of. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We can support Brazil's proposal on takes note. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. And the Philippines?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Philippines would like to use the word adopts the updated plan of action on subnational governments. That would be all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, the Philippines. Sorry, Philippines. I think maybe I am being a bit unclear because I'm not talking about paragraph 1 under the heading, but I think you're talking about the operational para 1. So we'll come back to your suggestion later on. So we do have a proposal by Brazil to replace welcomes with take notes of, and has been supported by Argentina. Could that be acceptable? This paragraph 1 under the heading with the amendment just proposed by Brazil. I see France, you have the floor.
France cannot speak, it's the EU. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Distinguished delegates, we would like to stick with the wording that we had earlier. Therefore, we would like to stay with the word welcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, and I understand you speak on behalf of EU and its member states. Yes, then I suggest that we have welcomes and take notes of both as two alternatives in brackets. I think that could be acceptable to all. I see no opposition, is so agreed. And then we go on to the para 2, also welcomes. Could the para 2 be acceptable? Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a similar proposal as of OP1. We suggest replacing also welcomes with takes note of the outcome of the Edinburgh process. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. And I suggest then, as we did at para 1, we put both welcomes and take notes of in square brackets as two alternatives. I think that's acceptable. So with that, that amendment? The para 2 can be accepted. Yes, see no opposition, is so agreed. I will then continue with para 3 on recognizes. Could the para 3 be acceptable, the EU and its member states? The EU, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, for paragraph 3, we would like to repeat the request that we made at the SBI-03 meeting that has not been taken on board. Therefore, we would like to ask that a paragraph be inserted as follows. It would be a 3 bis.
Promote the subscription of the Edinburgh Declaration, ideally before the end of COP15.
And then I'd like to make a general comment, if I may. We welcome the Edinburgh process and its plan of action. First of all, we'd like to point out that we will be sending the details of our comments and our requests for an adjustment to the language after this plenary session. We would like to include the following title in order to be consistent with Decision 14.3 of the CDB, which is Long-Term Strategic Approach to Mainstreaming Biodiversity. We would also like to introduce the full title, Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, throughout the text. This request also applies to CRP 16. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you, the EU. First, I need to be clear that we cannot send comments after this plenary session. We are now going through and review the CRP, and we will take all suggestions or amendments here in the plenary so parties can agree upon it. I hope, and this is normal procedure. I will review the CRP para by para and take all comments here in the plenary. So no comments later on, sorry. So I understand you have a suggestion to add a 3 bis, but could I first ask you if you can, I understand you could agree on the 3, but you would like to add a 3 bis, is that correct? The EU? Just so I have clear.
Oui, c'est correct.
Yes, quite right. We would just like to add a paragraph 3 bis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So before we go to your proposed 3 bis, is there any opposition to the 3 that is here in the text, recognize the unprecedented and urgent need, etc.? Algeria, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam. So regarding the statement of Morocco, which doesn't represent the African position, we don't agree and would like to, I will say it in French. So
Algeria does not agree with the proposal from Morocco, which was to include geographical location in the text of the preamble, and that this is not, and I'd like to reiterate this is not an African position, and I would ask you to take due note of that fact.
Thank you so much, Algeria. Yes, I take due note, and I also understood that Morocco will come back and present its proposal because we haven't heard the details yet. So we'll come back to that. So I go back then to my para 3. I think that para 3 is agreeable because I have not heard any others. So para 3 is agreed. Now let's come back to the suggestion by the EU to add a 3 bis. Could the EU please read out again your proposal for in dictation speed, please?
Invites parties to promote the subscription of the Edinburgh Declaration, ideally before the end of the COP15.
Okay, can parties accept the suggested freebies from the EU? Any comments on that one? Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the time being, Brazil is not in a position to accept the proposal from the EU. We understand that the Edinburgh Declaration is supported by subnational and local governments. That being so, we will not find appropriate to introduce this here. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Australia, you had the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're not in a position to accept the wording invites parties. We're happy with the concept, but we could use the word encourages parties.
Thank you. Before I go on my list, I would suggest, since there are different views on this, to add freebies in brackets and have two options. Invites in brackets and encourage in brackets. But the whole freebies will also be in brackets. I hope that can be acceptable. Cameroon, followed by Colombia.
Merci. Thank you. Cameroon would like to support the proposal from Brazil that felt when they stated that 3 bis, that they were not prepared to support 3 bis. We also consider that the word in the text, the word encourage, is much more appropriate than invite.
Yes, thank you so much. Since, as I said, the freebies proposed by the EU will be in brackets, and there will be 2 alternatives also in brackets, both encourage and advise in brackets. So if you can agree on that, please take down your hands. We don't need to hear it. We can just move on. Is that agreeable? Okay, I give the floor to Colombia, followed by the EU. Colombia, we have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We understand that the Edinburgh Declaration is not open for national governments for signature, but it is open for endorsement. This is the language they're using right now, in signal of the support of subnational governments in their contributions for the implementation of the post-2020 framework. So we would like to support the overall proposal of the EU, but to suggest replacing the term subscription with endorsement. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I give the floor to the EU, and maybe you can respond to the suggestion to Colombia when you take the floor. The EU, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indeed, we support the proposals made by Australia and Colombia. The word encourages is also fine or acceptable for us.
Thank you, the EU. Secretary, could you please read out the freebies as now amended?
Alternative brackets, invites or encourages parties to promote the alternative brackets, endorsement or subscription of the Edinburgh Declaration, ideally before the end of the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties.
And everything in bracket. The EU has agreed to take away. Encourages and endorsement.
Sorry, to take away? Yeah.
Yes, I understood that the EU could take away, could accept to have endorsement instead of subscription, right? So we can take that away. Okay.
Encourages instead of invite.
Yeah, okay.
Encourages instead of invite.
Okay, okay, good. No, I leave encourages, and I leave.
Okay, I know that the EU has already accepted encourages. Now, please, Secretary, read it out again so it's clear to everybody.
So it would read, encourages parties to promote the endorsement of the Edinburgh Declaration, ideally before the end of the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And everything is in brackets.
And I think with those, that is acceptable. I see no opposition. Freebies as amended is agreed. Oh, sorry, Brazil, maybe I was too quick. You have the floor. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate Colombia and the EU efforts to streamline the text and come up with an alternative language. But from our perspective, since parties have not been given the opportunity to contribute to the elaboration of the Edinburgh Declaration, we do not feel comfortable with 3Bs. So we would prefer to leave this in brackets.
Yes, and freebies is in brackets. So freebies in brackets, but as amended, I see no opposition is so agreed. Let's move on to the paragraph 4 in the chapeau. It is the text that starts with recommends. It's a decision draft. Any comments on the chapeau to the recommendation? There are, I think it is some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 preamble text before the decision text. Mexico, you had the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the 5th one, acknowledging the importance of a multi-stakeholder mechanism, we would like a text insertion regarding the Edinburgh Declaration seeks to ensure the representation of subnational governments, cities, and local authorities throughout the global framework cycle. So the text addition would be after multi-stakeholder mechanism, comma, that ensures representation of subnational governments, comma, cities, and local authorities to support the implementation of and continue with the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework.
Thank you, Mexico. And I have Brazil, followed by UK on my list. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry to take the floor once again. Regarding the preambular paragraphs, we would suggest deleting the last preambular paragraph, which starts with acknowledging the importance of a multi-stakeholder mechanism. We feel that we need further discussions on what this mechanism would look like before acknowledging the need for this mechanism. And since we're expected to adopt this plan of action on subnational governments, we think that this plan of action, we would assess the implementation of this new plan of action over the period of the implementation of the post-2020 GBF. And then if we feel it's necessary, then we could consider the possibility of a new multi-stakeholder mechanism. But for the time being, we believe that we need further discussions on this, and we would prefer to have PP4 is the last preamble paragraph on the acknowledging the importance of a multi-stakeholder mechanism deleted. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. UK, followed by Argentina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two comments. The first is relating to the first paragraph of the preambular here, and it's really a minor editorial note. where it reads, promoting the engagement of cities and local authorities in the implementation of the convention, we would like it to read, promoting the engagement of subnational governments, cities and other local authorities in the implementation of the convention, just to bring it in line with the wording used in the rest of the CRP.
Sorry,
And-
UK, could you please repeat?
Yes.
Because we.
Of course. So, in the first preambular paragraph of the decision, where it reads, there are multiple reasons for promoting the engagement of cities and local authorities, we would like it to read, promoting the engagement of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities, to bring it in line with the wording used in the rest of the CRP. And then just picking up on the point that Brazil made there. So within this last paragraph, acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanism, what is actually being referred to here is the multi-stakeholder mechanisms that were called for in the first decision, decision X/22 from COP10. These multi-stakeholder mechanisms have been created. These are things that already exist, such as ICLEI and other regional and local networks and mechanisms, such as the advisory committees. This is not requesting anything new. So perhaps better wording here would be acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and then the insertion from Mexico, which we can support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, UK. Argentina, followed by Mexico.
Thank you, Chair. And first, our comment is on the second preambular paragraph of the decision for the COP, that says, noting that while responsibilities for the implementation of the convention rest primarily with the parties, we have some legal concerns there regarding the expression primarily and how this may be interpreted. So we would request to delete primarily in that preambular paragraph, given that we understand from a legal perspective that the responsibilities to implement the convention lay with parties. And of course, we acknowledge the rest of the paragraph as well, that we need the contribution of subnational governments in this, but the responsibilities are for the parties. Regarding the paragraph that Brazil, the UK, and Mexico were discussing, we would request to read the paragraph to understand how it currently is. Thank you.
Yes, please, Secretariat.
Between brackets, acknowledging the importance of a multi-stakeholder mechanism that ensures representation of subnational governments, cities, and local authorities to support the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, the long-term approach to mainstreaming, and other related strategies as called for in the Edinburgh Declaration.
Thank you, Secretariat. I give the floor to Mexico, followed by the EU. Mexico, you have the floor.
Thank you. To echo what UK has mentioned, there are already existing multi-stakeholder mechanisms, so we would support what UK suggestion was to delete the A, so acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms, that with an S at the end, that, I mean, we already have those. And just for consistency with the text, in representation of subnational government cities and other local authorities to make sure that we have consistency throughout. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. The EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the paragraph that we just talked about, the EU would like to support the statement made by Mexico and the United Kingdom. And we can, for the first paragraph that starts with noting that, we can support the proposal made by Brazil to delete l'Argentine. And we would like to insert in that paragraph, starting with noting that, the word subnational governments after the word the engagement of, and also the word other before the word local authorities. Ensuite, pour le paragraphe.
Next, for paragraph 5.4, we would like to request that the following paragraph, which was in the earlier version, be reinserted. It was withdrawn without the agreement of parties.
In the post-COVID-19 world, the role of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities is even more important, so that effective green responses, recovery, and redesign approaches requiring collaborative action can be co-designed and rapidly implemented with respect to each level of government's competencies, ensuring that such approaches apply and promote biodiversity in both cities and non-urban territories.
Okay, could you please repeat? I understand you want to add a new preamble paragraph. So can you please read it out again in a dictation speed, please?
Recognizing that in the post-COVID-19 world, the role of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities is even more important.
Sorry, it seems to be difficult to... Okay, sorry. I think maybe we are all a bit tired now, but maybe could I please repeat and slowly with in dictation speed. Thanks.
Recognizing that in the post-COVID-19 world, the role of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities is even more important, so that effective green responses, recovery and redesign approaches requiring collaborative action can be co-designed and rapidly implemented with respect to each level of government's competencies, ensuring that such approaches apply and promote biodiversity in both cities and non-urban territories.
Could you repeat the text from ensuring at the end, please?
Ensuring that such approaches apply and promote biodiversity in both cities and non-urban territories.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we got it now. Before we continue, I would like to ask Brazil. You have heard many comments on your, they want to keep the text in preamble text about the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanism. Since it's already there, it's existing, could you then maybe consider to agree to this para? You have asked for a deletion. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate Mexico and UK's efforts to come up with an alternative language. I think for this to be acceptable, we would prefer a more streamlined version of this PP, perhaps along the lines as follows. Acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and platforms to support the post-2020 GBF and to ensure the full participation of subnational governments. I think this was the part suggested by Mexico. And then full stop. So it would read as acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and platforms to support the post-2020 GBF and to ensure the full participation of subnational governments. I don't remember the rest of the Mexican proposal, and then full stop. And then we would drop some references, some additional reference to mainstreaming and the Edinburgh Declaration and have a more streamlined version of the PP. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Brazil. Could maybe the Secretariat read out the text as amended by Brazil?
Acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and platforms to support the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and ensure the representation of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities.
Yes, thank you, Secretary. I hope that has been clear. Now we do have...
There is a problem because this is a verb.
Yes, the Secretariat just pointed out that...
It's just a that.
Yeah, we make it.
That.
We put in a that before ensure, so we make it correct grammatically. Thank you. Since we do have many suggestions in the preambular paragraphs, I would then like to take each preambular paragraph so we can make sure that we can have agreement on each one. So in the decision text, we do have the first text that I think that recommends a conference of parties, the 15th blah, 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 that is acceptable. And then we do have a first preambular paragraph. And if the Secretariat could read out, because we have some suggestions for amendments in the one start by noting that. Please read it out.
Noting that while responsibilities for the implementation of the Convention rest with the parties, there are multiple reasons for promoting the engagement of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities in the implementation of the Convention.
Yes, thank you, Secretariat. And I hope this text is agreeable. Could you please take down your hand? I want to make sure. Okay, I see an opposition, so the subpara with the amendments is agreed. And then we do have the other one.
The next two are together, nobody made any comment.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't have any comment yet at the second subpara, started by also noting that. So I presume we can agree on that preambular paragraph, starting with also noting that some national governments. Yeah, I see no comments, so it's so agreed. Did we have any comments on the third one? No? I have not seen any comments yet on the third one, started with recognize the important role of some national governments. So I presume we can agree on that. Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would just like to make a small amendment. We would like to suggest including the text CBD instead of the wording on biodiversity. It's not clear for us what are biodiversity objectives, but instead the CBD objectives. And after objectives, include a comma as well as in monitoring, just to improve the wording of the text. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. So If Secretariat read out the text as amended by Colombia.
Recognizing the important role of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities in the implementation of the Convention on Biological Diversity, as well as in monitoring and reporting, mainstreaming, resource mobilization, capacity building and communication, education and public awareness, social participation, and public access to information.
Thank you. Oh, Colombia, you come back.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry to take the floor again. Just to clarify that we didn't mean to delete the word objectives, but only biodiversity, and to replace it with the wording on the CBD. Thank you.
Okay, that I note that, and we will instead said implementation of CBD objectives, and then continue as just read out. I think the subpara with those amendments are acceptable. I see no objections, is so agreed. And now we're back on subparagraph 4, where we did have some suggestions, and we have also some suggestions for streamlining from Brazil. So maybe Secretariat read it out again and see if we can have agreement on that subpara.
Acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and platforms to support the 2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that ensure the representation of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities.
Thank you, Secretariat. Can that subpara be, as amended, be agreed? I see, no? Okay, the EU and Morocco. The EU, you have the floor.
We would like to ask for the repetition of that paragraph because we think it was not correctly repeated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can ask the Secretary. And please note that it was amended because Brazil wanted to make some amendments to be able to leave their suggestion to delete it. So, Secretary, please read out again.
Acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and platforms to support the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that ensure the representation of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities.
Thank you, Secretariat. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a little concern concerning this paragraph, which ends with a bracketed text. Oh, with one bracket, the closing bracket, but I cannot find the opening bracket. Is it only in the French text, or is the same situation in other language versions?
Morocco pointing that out. Is a typo. It should not be a closing bracket. So thank you that you pointed that out. Australia, and followed by the EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, we are supportive of that paragraph as you read out, but would just request one small change to replace the word ensure with provide for the full participation and then the rest of the paragraph.
Thank you, Australia. The EU, followed by the UK.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We can support the first part of the sentence. However, we cannot support the second part of the sentence, starting from to support, or rather the deletion. I repeat, or I read out what we want to keep: to support the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, the long-term strategic approach to mainstreaming biodiversity, and other related strategies as called for in the Edinburgh Declaration. I precisely want to keep that sentence.
Thank you.
If it's not possible, then maybe we can stick to the original wording or put everything in brackets. Thank you.
Thank you. The EU, UK, followed by Mexico.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to support Brazil's amended paragraph. I think it's a much more streamlined and compromised paragraph there, so thank you for Brazil. But we would like to make one small addition to that paragraph where it says, and platforms to support the post-2020 GBF. We would like to insert the implementation of, so it would read, the platforms to support the implementation of the post-2020 GBF. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think we have problem with the French interpretation. Now it's back again. Thanks. Okay, Colombia followed by Argentina. Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In general, we can be supportive of all the amendments that have been done now, but we would really like to keep the reference on the long-term approach to mainstreaming and other strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. And Argentina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And regarding this paragraph, we would request to kindly keep the reference to the long-term approach to mainstreaming and other related strategies in brackets, as we have not agreed upon that yet. And we can support other amendments by the UK and Australia. And I wish to take this opportunity to refer to the new paragraph suggested by France, speaking for the EU, which we believe it's very much out of context and makes this introductory part longer than needed, while many of those elements are already contained in the previous preambular paragraphs. So we kindly request to delete this paragraph, as it doesn't add any new elements. And in our view...
Yes, thank you, Arjun. I will come back on the proposal by the EU. I would like to finalize the discussion on this subpara. Thank you. Okay, I heard a lot of comments on these preambular paragraphs, and some would like to keep text that was suggested to be deletion, but some others are supportive of deletion. So, well, I think the best way forward is to put it in square brackets. So if the Secretariat can read out the preambular paragraphs with the square brackets so it's clear to everybody. Thanks.
Acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and platforms to support the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that, alternative brackets, provide for or ensure the representation of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities, now between brackets, to support the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, the long-term approach to mainstreaming, and other related strategies as called for in the Edinburgh Declaration. Brackets closed.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I hope that this can be acceptable. The EU?
Maybe, thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe it's easier if I read it out, the version that we would like to insert. It is acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and platforms to support the implementation of the global biodiversity framework that provide for the representation of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities, the long-term strategic approach to mainstreaming biodiversity and other related strategies as called for in the Edinburgh Declaration. And please just put the last bit, starting with the long-term strategic approach, ending with the Edinburgh Declaration, into brackets. Thank you.
Okay, I want to make sure we have followed this, so please read it out again so we make sure we have a right version here. Sorry, I'm being picking up Italians. Please read it out.
Acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and platforms to support the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that provide for the representation of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities, bracket, the long-term strategic approach to mainstreaming biodiversity and other related strategies as called for in the Edinburgh Declaration, end of bracket. Thank you.
Thank you, now I got it. Okay, now I will ask the Secretary to read it out, the preamble text as amended.
Acknowledging the importance of multi-stakeholder mechanisms and platforms to support the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that provide for the representation of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities, open brackets, the long-term approach to mainstreaming and other related strategies as called for in the Edinburgh Declaration, close brackets.
Okay, I hope that preamble paragraph, those amendments and brackets can be accepted. I see no objections, so agreed. Now I'd like to come back to the proposal by the EU to add one extra preamble paragraph, and I could ask the Secretary to read it out. That would be placed after this preamble paragraph. Please read it out.
Recognizing that in the post-COVID 2019 world, the role of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities is even more important, so that effective green responses, recovery and redesign approaches requiring collaborative action can be co-designed and rapidly implemented with respect to each level of government competencies, ensuring that such an approach apply and promote biodiversity in both cities and non-urban environments.
Okay, can the proposal by the EU be acceptable to parties? Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as we mentioned before, we believe this paragraph here is out of place. Firstly, because the main ingredients that it contains regarding the participation of some national governments and cities and other local authorities is already described in the preceding preambular paragraphs. Secondly, because it sort of addresses matters related to health, which are discussed in another document related to biodiversity and health and shouldn't be included here. So we see no added value to include this new paragraph, and we kindly request you to delete it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Argentina. So the EU, you have heard the views of Argentina. Could you withdraw your proposal? The EU?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to keep that paragraph, and if it's not possible to have consent on that, then we would propose to put it into brackets for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, the EU. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We share the concerns that were raised by Argentina. If we are to engage in the discussion of this new PP, we would like to propose some amendments to it, recognizing that in the post-COVID-19 recovery, sustainable recovery efforts, instead of post-COVID-19 world, we would also like to suggest deleting the reference to green responses, green response, recovery, and redesign approaches, and add sustainable, inclusive, and resilient actions in the context of the post-COVID-19 sustainable recovery. And in the end of this PP, we would suggest to add a reference addressing the unique and emerging urban development challenges facing, in particular, developing countries, which is consistent with the new urban agenda adopted in 2006 under the UN Habitat. But I believe that this PP would require further consideration, and we'd prefer for this at this stage to leave all in brackets with these amendments just made in brackets as well. Thank you.
Okay, I think the best way forward is to put everything in brackets now, and I understand that Brazil want also your suggested amendments in the brackets. Okay, we have kept those. Colombia, you had the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We would like to support the proposal made by the EU on this new paragraph. I really couldn't capture really well the Brazil's amendments, but some of them were interesting for us. I don't know if it could be read out, but what I would also like to do is to include an additional very short preambular paragraph referring to a principle of the ecosystem approach. We have seen that there are repetitive references to this approach in the paragraphs below. Of course, we are very supportive of this reference, but we would like to suggest text here in the preamble so as not to repeat this reference several times. So the new paragraph would read, recalling Principle 2 of the ecosystem approach adopted in Decision 5/6. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Colombia. I will try to finalize the discussion on this new proposal by the EU and also amended by Brazil. Can you please, Secretary, read it out? It will be in brackets, and also all the amendments by Brazil will be in brackets.
So, recognizing that in the post-COVID 2019, now alternative, recovery efforts or world, the role of subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities is even more important. So now we have between brackets, so that effective green responses, recovery and redesign approaches, or sustainable, inclusive, and I didn't get that, actions in the context of the post-2019 recovery, and then we go out of brackets, and requiring collaborative action can be co-designed and rapidly implemented with respect to each level of government competencies, ensuring that such approaches apply and promote biodiversity in both cities and non-urban environments. And then we have an alternative that is addressing the unique development challenges facing, in particular, developing countries consistent with the new urban agenda adopted in Quito. Thank you.
So the insertion of this text also, everything will be in brackets. Is that acceptable? Yeah, I see no opposition is of the EU. You have the floor.
Things he didn't mention. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify two things. It's post-COVID-19 world. I think we heard post-2019 world. It's just post-COVID-19 world. And at the end, it's non-urban territories and not government, not environments. And then we have, after the word government's competencies, we have an apostrophe. So it's not government competencies, but government's competencies. Thank you.
Thank you, the EU. We have captured those things. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm sorry to take the floor once again. Just a small correction. It's sustainable, inclusive, and resilient actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you that you help us to capture, because it's a lot of complicated text. We want, of course, to make sure we got it all right. So we have those amendments. I hope, and everything is in brackets. I hope Para will be agreed. Yeah, I see no opposition. Is so agreed. And then we did have a proposal by Colombia to add a reference to the
recalling principle 2 of the ecosystem approach adopted in decision 5/6.
precautional.
Yes. No, this is the ecosystem approach. It's on scales of...
Yeah, okay. So please, Secretariat, read it out, what the proposal from Colombia, for the new preambular text.
Recalling Principle 2 of the ecosystem approach as adopted in Decision 5/6 of the Convention.
Okay, the suggestion by Colombia is acceptable. I see no opposition. Is so agreed? Of the EU, you have it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to put the proposal in brackets. Thank you.
Okay, I put the proposal by the Colombia in brackets, but with brackets, I think it can be agreed. Is so decided. So I now turn to Morocco. Have you finalized your proposal for a preamble paragraphs? Morocco, you have the floor.
I thank you, Madam Chair. Exactly. We had a small meeting to consult on the position by the African group. And we propose that this paragraph would be placed at the beginning of the preamble. And I'm going to read it out at dictation speed, if you allow me. But even before, with all confidence in the Secretariat, we expect, concerning the references, including the documents number and so on, we cannot check it immediately. Recalling the plan of action on biodiversity on national level, cities and other local authorities for the plan of action on biodiversity 2011-2020 and welcomes its successful implementation.
Thank you, Morocco. So I understand you want that preambular paragraph be placed in the beginning, right? The preambular text here. Okay, I ask the Secretary to read it out again.
Recalling the and I will use now the legal name, 2011-2020 Plan of Action for Subnational Governments, Cities and Other Local Authorities, and welcoming its successful implementation.
Thank you, Secretariat. So the proposal by the African group, Marocco, you would like to come back?
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
I thank you, Madam Chair. Just to be faithful to the African group, at the end of this paragraph, welcoming the progress in its implementation. Welcoming progress in its implementation. So there's a slight difference with what has been just read out by Secretary.
Thank you, Morocco. We add progress in, so make it clear. I see if there are any opposition. Otherwise, I propose we add this preamble text in the beginning of preamble. I see none. Is so agreed. So thank you, colleagues. We have gone through the preamble paras. I have to ask the Secretary much time. Can I continue? 10 minutes. They tell me I can continue in 10 minutes, so let's see what we can do. I would now like to turn to the operational paras, and we do have para 1. And here we do have already 2 options in brackets, adopts and takes note of. And I have on my list Canada, followed by Philippines and South Africa. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Canada added the formulation "take note" at the virtual session, given that we had some question about the plan. However, we have received the information that we need. And as such, Canada would like to withdraw its proposal to take note of the plan. Furthermore, we suggest that SBI recommends the adoption of the updated plan of action. So we wish to retain adopt. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Philippines joins Canada in adopting the word adopt, considering that this is a very important document that, that will enable the subnational governments to fully implement the post-2020 GBF. So that's why parties should not take note of this document. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippines. All that can agree on to delete, take notes of, and keep adopts can put down their hand. Okay, I still have some delegates asking for the floor. So South Africa, you have the floor, followed by Australia.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Noting that the implementation of the plan of action rests with the subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities, South Africa would like to propose that we endorse instead of adopting. We will be happy to put our suggestions in brackets. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. Australia, followed by Argentina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, we are still consulting within our national government on this one, so would prefer to keep the 2 options on the table at this stage.
Thank you, and I do think we now have 3 options: endorse, adopts, and take notes. Exactly. All 3 in brackets. Argentina?
Thank you, Chair. And we are very supportive of having this updated plan of action on subnational governments, but we have noticed that there are still parts in brackets in this document, and we have not had time to discuss it yet, and we would really like to be able to do so. So it would be difficult for us to take one of these options at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. Okay. Yes, Thank you, Argentina. You do really have a point. I would then suggest we come back to para 1 when we have discussed the remaining parts of the document. So I leave para 1 for a while and go on to para 2. Can para 2 be acceptable? Is it acceptable?
No, because it refers to paragraph 1 above.
Okay, I have the EU fall above UK.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would just like to withdraw or delete the word "as appropriate" from this paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you. The EU, South Africa. You had the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Perhaps we can, instead of inviting, we can urge parties and invite other governments. Thank you. Also wish to support Morocco on the proposal for the preamble paragraph that they have suggested on behalf of Africa. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, South Africa, and that preamble paragraph has been agreed. So you want to add request or ask parties and invite other governments, is that correct? I think we normally, could you suffer? We normally invite parties. Could South Africa come back? Okay, I've been told by the Secretary that the normal language is urge parties and invite other governments. Could that be acceptable for South Africa?
Sorry, ma'am, that was my request to urge instead of saying invite. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will ask New Zealand. You had the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is in relation to the wording that follows, invites other relevant organisations. I think you need to delete the word other. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I will ask the Secretary to read out the para 2 as now amended. Secretariat.
So 2 alternative readings. One is invites parties. Alternative reading urges parties and invites other relevant governments. Continue, and relevant organizations to facilitate as, oh, they're twice as appropriate, so I don't know, I believe the second stays, to facilitate as appropriate the implementation of the updated plan of action referred to in paragraph 1 above, according to national legislation, including by.
Yes.
Apologies, I'm just going to read it out again. Urge parties and invites other governments and relevant organizations to facilitate, as appropriate, the implementation of the updated plan of action referred to in paragraph 1 above, according to national legislation, including by. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Secretary. I think that was clear. I hope that this part of para 2 is acceptable. UK, you had the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's really just a point of clarification from the Secretariat. Was the word urge parties or urges parties? I think urges is more in line with other paragraphs in the rest of the decision. Thank you.
Yes, it should be urges. Okay, I see no other request for the floor, so I assume that this part of para 2 is agreeable. Is so decided. Unfortunately, we need to end now. I would like to go on, but we will come back to this CRP next time we meet. So, distinguished delegates, this brings us to the end of our SBI plenary meeting for today. And I would like to thank you all for all good cooperation and suggestions. And before closing, I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat for an announcement. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So, as always, we want to remind you to check the monitors and the website for any schedule changes. We will have a SubSTA session tomorrow morning, a SubSTA plenary, not an SBI plenary. The SBI plenary will resume on Saturday morning. So tomorrow morning is the SubSTA plenary, so please check online. I want to remind you that this afternoon we have a contact group for the working group on DSI. It will continue from yesterday. And in the evening, we have 2 SBI contact groups, one on the implementation plan for the Cartagena Protocol, and the second one is on agenda item 9 on review mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. Colleagues, this meeting of SBI plenary is now closed. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Oliver, you're not doing very well.